Welcome back, guys, to the Beyond Condition podcast, the voice of bodybuilding. And today's voice is someone that's been on the pod before, but it's been a while. Zena is joining me today to talk about the art of natural bodybuilding. And this is a brand new series as well. So everyone will know that I talk about bodybuilding as creating your masterpiece, but I want to break this down over different episodes, talking about natural bodybuilding, talking about tracking food, sleep, all of the essentially pillars of bodybuilding. So I'm happy that you're joining me today for the first one. So thank you.
No, thank you so much for having me back on. I remember last time, I'm pretty sure it was like 2 years ago, wasn't it? We
Yeah.
said I was like I'd like, love to come back on. And I think that when we last spoke, I've done a prep since then, haven't I? So yeah, it'll be super cool to kind of dive in to a little bit more about the like natural side of things. And yeah, just thank you again for having me on.
No, of course. It's when you meet people in the space, right? It's like sometimes you just catch that vibe and it's like, oh, okay, we understand each other and you can bring a multitude of things to a conversation. It's like, oh, if you're listening to a pod, it's like I can really take something from the conversations. And I was just telling you before we jumped on, I really do feel like you're an advocate for bodybuilding in itself. And I feel like you enjoy bodybuilding and you just do the push up, you do the prep, you go into competition with an open mind. Obviously, we're looking to do well, as we probably wouldn't do it. And,
Yeah.
having that mindset, would you say that that's come over time, or have you always just been like, when you're doing sport, etc., you're just in it and you just love it?
Yeah, to be honest, I think it's definitely always been like a part of me. I think, like from doing sport, you kind of have, I always kind of had the mindset of like doing something for a purpose for a later goal. Do you know what I mean? So like training sessions when I was a swimmer would be, you do that training session and I know like the effort I put in that moment isn't really going to do anything, but then the long-term outcome is what is going to be different. And for me, that's kind of always like my driving force is day to day, you can make decisions and those decisions can either lead you to somewhere that you want to be long term or where you don't want to be. And realistically, like my thought as well is if I don't make the decisions that I know are right on a like day to day basis, then I would look back in a year or so and not have made any progress. And I've definitely been there before, I've gone to the gym and, just kept doing what I almost thought I should do or what felt best on that day. But then I look back and I wouldn't look any different.
Yeah, yeah, it is. I feel like it's almost maturity in the sport as well, isn't it? It's like,
Yeah.
actually, I could have done better, but you raise a valid point. It's like, so if you know you could do better, you've got to notice that in yourself, and this is important. People listening, it's like have the purpose, but are you putting the effort into all of the fundamentals of bodybuilding? And could you do better? Because we, of course, like you say, the daily drivers, you can have
Yeah.
shit days, can't you? Where it's like bloody hell,
Yeah.
it's going to be really hard, but you can still have that purpose and intention. And I think we can get wrapped up in other stuff, the noise and other things going on, and it can take away from. And then you, like you say, you look back in a year and you think, I probably, because it could be 1% better, but how much does
Yeah.
that mean to you, you know?
Yeah, no, for sure. And like something someone told me once was like, your 100% each day looks different. And I think that's definitely what helps me like mentally is like knowing that today's 100% is not necessarily the same as tomorrow's 100%. But as long as I'm doing what I like can in that day, then you can kind of look back and think, do you know what, like I'm proud of that. And I think, yeah, I mean, in terms of like the different phases, like for me, it's kind of like they have their purposes. And for me, I'm a very like I'm black and white, like
Me
this is
too.
yeah, like this has this purpose and that's the outcome of it, if that makes sense. So I think that's probably why I don't kind of like struggle so much with them, because I love all of it.
Yeah, yeah, it is as well. It's like getting to those points of each phase. There's those bits where you're like, I just feel quite good in between
Yeah,
the phases where you're like,
yeah,
"Oh, good." And then it's like this is the whole nature of bodybuilding, depending on where you're going with it. Now, there's so many categories, so many federations, etc. There's
mhm,
different. It's going to look different for everyone,
yeah,
depending on how extreme you want to go, as it were. But also, it's being able to take that acceptance to when you get to stage lean, and you're very good at this. It's like, okay, it's time to come out of it. The season's
yeah.
ended. Time to move on to the next goal and the purpose. And have you always sort of found that with post show and moving through seasons that you can
Yeah.
just flip that hat?
Yeah, honestly, because like for me, by the time it gets to the point of the end of the season, and don't get me wrong, like when I'm in like my first or second show of the season, I'm like, oh, this is so cool. Like I want to, do more and more and more. But it definitely, in both seasons I've done, it's got to the last show and I thought like I don't want to feel like this anymore. Like don't get me wrong, like I love being on stage, I love competing, I love all of it, but it gets to the stage where I'm like living like this isn't what I want to be like for much longer, I'm ready and I'm ready to kind of like feel myself again, feel strong again. And for me, it's kind of like performance and feeling in the gym. Like right now, at a higher level of body fat, like I go and do my sessions and I feel strong, I feel powerful, and like that means so much to me. And I think when I'm so lean to the point that I go into my sessions and like everything feels like a challenge, I don't like that place. And even though, I like I like getting trophies and things like that, it's definitely not something that I would want to be in forever. And I'm very kind of aware of like hormonal status as well. And like being at such a lean level for so long is not hormonally safe. So I think when it gets to that point in the season, I definitely know in my head that like it's time to stop now, it's time to like reverse, get some health markers back. And I know I'll be back here at some point. It's just not right now.
Yeah, for sure. It also is that intuition with yourself. It's like actually, and I've had this feeling when I'm literally like, I don't think I could actually carry on even if I wanted to. I'm like you feel just, at that point, and like you say, it clicks in your head. I remember when we did our pod, and I've thought about it so many times, and I often reference it. You said to me, because I'd never done a longer off season,
Yeah.
you'll get to a point where it's like I'm really enjoying this. Like
Yeah.
this feels so good. And
Yeah.
I certainly reached that point in this last off season where I was just like, I just feel really good. And I worked on, my relationship with food, etc. And I'm like, I just really love bodybuilding. And
Yeah.
what a place to be, that peace of mind to just go and own the gym. And I just don't see body fat as a negative anymore.
Yeah, no, it's definitely, I think females in particular, it's definitely the biggest thing they struggle with because a lot of females wouldn't have pushed up to a level of that body fat with intention, A lot of people may have come down from there, but then they didn't want to be there or they associated that higher level of body fat with like negative thoughts. Whereas kind of when you're intentionally pushing your body weight back up to that place and you're almost trying to have a different mindset. Like sometimes it is really challenging. But I think the mindset of, that body fat is providing a purpose, and that purpose is you can get stronger in the gym. And then getting stronger in the gym equates to more muscle. It's almost like, okay, body fat's pretty cool.
Yeah,
It's like, yeah. And it's trying to like flip that switch in your head. And I think society's definitely let people down. I think growing up in this day and age, like there's so many negative associations with being a larger person or, food and things like that. And I think that's why genuinely so many people in our era struggle. Whereas my mum and dad and that was never a thing. They didn't ever think stuff like that. It was kind of just everything was simpler, I would say.
definitely.
But yeah, I definitely think we're moving out of that now. I think the next generation can almost be inspired by a lot of people knowing that different levels of body fat are normal. And I don't know if you ever saw it when the Olympics was on last year. There was like a reel going round, and it's like athletes look different, and it was like of people of literally every single shape, size, body weight winning gold medals. And I was like, this is what you want. This is what you want to see.
Yeah, that's what I love as well. It's like yourself, small but mighty, Romana, like pushing up, then you're winning shows, right? So it's like that there's got to be, when you say like success leaves clues, it's like
Yeah.
if you look at these female bodybuilders and what they're prepared to do in an off season, and then they do well in the season, it sort of it gives you the clue into what you need to do. And that in itself, I feel like a lot of females could even look at that and go, because it's just temporary, isn't it? Like you're not your body weight.
Yeah, exactly. It doesn't define you as a person. And I always think like we've all, any person had lost or gained weight in the past. Like it's such a fluctuating thing anyway. It's like, okay, if you push up to a point where you are genuinely unhappy and uncomfortable, you can come back down. It's not black or white. You're not, you're not going to get there and stay there. Like there's a very short period of time where you will be at a very uncomfortable body weight, but it has a purpose. And I definitely I advocate for that. And, I've said it to you years ago, but it is just genuinely like, you need to just think like it's for a reason and that's okay.
Yeah, for sure. And particularly when we look at natural, I mean, there's, for both assisted and natural, longer off seasons are a good thing. But I
Yeah.
feel like probably more so I see more natural athletes allowing a longer period of time for obvious reasons. Is
Yeah.
that something that you've always sort of been taught by coaches in your ethos in itself to have that longer time because you're natural as well?
Yeah, like 100%. My track record is competing once every 3 years. Like, it's not because I don't want to compete. Like, don't get me wrong, I would love to get back on stage this year, but like, there's clues in it as well. So when I dieted last year, which would have been like 1 year after the stage, by kind of 10 weeks into the diet, I'd already lost my period. I was already showing signs of resistance. And that shows me like I wasn't ready to be pushed any further at that point in time. And that's because I still probably wasn't fully hormonally recovered from my prep. And
Mm.
even though my bloods were normal, my body obviously wasn't. And I think, it's very easy again to take bloods and think, yeah, okay, my bloods are within normal range, let's go. But that's not the whole picture. And you've got to also listen to kind of the fact that my body was showing signs of like resisting the diet and also mentally, it got to kind of 10 weeks. I was like, I'm bored of this. Like, I don't want to diet anymore. So that for me and AJ said, like, I'm not ready to prep yet. And that's okay. And I think any natural, obviously, coming out of a prep, you are going to take much longer to reach that normal. Like, it's going to take 3, 4, 5 months. If you were then going to jump back into a prep, then you're not ready and you definitely wouldn't have grown much since kind of coming out. I think, with assistance, you can almost aid your recovery to speed it up a little bit, but it's still the same thing that if you compete every single year, like your body is taking a battering. And it's just weighing up, what you want right now versus what you want long term, as with anything really.
Yeah, because it is, when you're committing to the longer phases, it's like actually that's a commitment to longevity as a bodybuilder. And
Yeah.
there's this like, I feel like you can get into the groove in off season. I see this a lot, and then suddenly it's like, oh my God, I've got to diet again. And it's like, whoa,
Yeah.
it's almost like an emotive response to something. You could have seen something on social media, or
Yeah.
and you're suddenly like, oh, I need to diet again. And but then it almost, and this is how I see it, Zena, it's almost like you yo-yo dieting. You're not.
Yeah.
It's not
Yeah.
really a
And
sport.
you also see like the correlation of people like dieting when show seasons start because it's like almost like, okay, I want to prep. The need and want for prep is a lot more when it's show season because you'll consistently see people on stage, right? And I get it. Like last year, I was seeing people compete and I was like, I'm ready. I'm ready to go again. But like my body wasn't ready to go again, and it's definitely, in the summer months when people are on stage, I think people then start to think like, okay, like I want to diet or I need to diet when it might not necessarily be what you need. And I think, there's something Ethan's been saying a lot recently to like his clients and myself in particular as well. It's like wants and needs are not the same thing. And if you want to be like a good bodybuilder, you can't just do what you want. You have to also do what you need, which is such an important message.
Yeah, yeah, and it is as well, when you are in a prep, I think that it's almost like it's like, oh, I want to do it, like you say, because you want the lean bit, but
Yeah.
then you sort of forget what what a prep entails, and it sort of kicks in, and you think, oh, okay, I haven't felt this for a while, and
Yeah.
also like, you know, actually enjoying off season is what as you said I would. It was just like, this is
Yeah.
so good.
It's so good. Yeah.
And off plan would be like, I might have an off plan today. Like it wasn't like this. Every Saturday I have off plan. I'm gonna
Yeah.
overeat.
It's
It's
just
like,
when you want it, exactly. Yeah. And I think, when you kind of truly fall in love with the off season, you kind of fall in love with the sport in a different way. And I think the problem with bodybuilding becoming like so accessible right now is people forget that part of it. And that's where you see a lot of people kind of come straight into the sport, do a prep and then leave because they never really truly valued this part of the sport, which for me is where you're spending majority of your time, the majority of your time should be spent in an off-season setting. And if you can't learn to almost like love and embrace that, then the other parts are kind of they mean less, in my opinion.
Yeah, for sure. I guess as well, there's almost this like with the sort of social media and like you say, it's very accessible now. Also, there's like the new fit model category, so there's
Yeah.
different categories coming in to cater for more people. It really is, and I think this is a coach's purpose also. And I know you're coaching now as well. I'm sure your same mindset. It's like, are we educating our clients that are saying, I want to do a prep to actually go, this is what it entails, this is what it's generally speaking going to look like. Is this actually realistic for you? Like, why, as a coach, why do you want to do this, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, no, for sure. And I definitely think with the increase in like coaches and things like that, there isn't enough people telling other people that maybe it's not right for you right now, you know? Like I have a client at the moment who I know she is going to be incredible on stage, but she's not ready yet
Hmm.
because she hasn't fallen in love with the whole sport. And for me, it's like I could easily say, let's prep right now. And don't get me wrong, like I think she would do very well, but then I also think she'd leave the sport next year because she hasn't spent enough time just doing the fundamentals. And I guess it kind of leads us nicely onto like prepping as a natural first, which I know is something that you wanted to talk about, but just kind of like learning to love the basic things before you even consider doing a contest prep is like such a forgotten part, I think, nowadays. And a lot of people, you know, they'll message a coach and be like, I want to prep, but like they've never even tracked their meals for a week.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. It's wild as well because it's the coaches will take them on and this is it as well as a coach. Ideally, in an ideal setting, it's not always the case because different scenarios, but could we have someone for a good period of time in either at least a maintenance or an
Yeah.
off season to even accrue some data, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and just building up that like rapport with them, you know, understanding them as a person, understand what makes them tick, understand what makes them, you know, potentially lose motivation, whatever. Like it's just learning about each other. And like you said, it's situation dependent. You know, there's some cases where people will come and they may have come from a different coach and then they want to carry on their prep or things like that. And in those situations, yeah, it's not ideal, but it happens. But like you said, like if you can in an ideal world, spending time with someone first is, you know, is what you need, but that's not what people want.
Yeah, it's back to the want and need. And you actually changed to AJ. Was it after your last season? How was
Yeah.
that sort of transition into a different coach and what brought that about? That
Yeah, so it was very natural to be honest. Like I've known AJ since I started bodybuilding and he's known me as well. So, you know, it's coming up over 5 years since I've known of AJ and we've spoken things like that. And I think for me, like I when I did that 2023 prep, I did weigh up potentially going to AJ at that point, or potentially going somewhere else. And I ended up going with 3DMJ, which, you know, for me, it was a faultless prep. Like I cannot say a single bad word about Brian, who was my coach. And we got along super well. He understood me as an athlete. I love the way he set up my prep, and I genuinely don't have a single bad thing that I could ever say because I'm very grateful for everything he's taught me. But the only one thing that was missing for me was the fact that I know that I would never be able to see Brian in person, at least not on a regular basis, right? Because he's from America and there's a time difference, and I'm not going to go fly to America to do an in-person check-in, obviously. And, you know, it was one of those where it was like, I want and need now somebody who can see me in person in between my preps. And for me that was very important, and it was kind of like a natural transition. I'd seen AJ a lot through that prep anyway. I saw him at the shows and things like that, and yeah, I mean after the show I was like, the next time I step on stage could potentially be in a pro show, and I want somebody to be there in person on the day because I've actually never had a coach at my show before. So it was like I messaged AJ and I was like, look, like would you take me on? And obviously he was like, yeah, like of course. And since then, like it's been amazing. And I knew it was the right decision. But it's just felt like he's always been my coach, which is a nice feeling.
Yeah, for sure. I didn't have a coach at my shows for the first like 6 seasons, and then when I had Tom
Wow.
coach, he came to every show, and I didn't realize, and it's been great for me as a coach as well, what that brings.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, exactly. And do you know what? I don't think anything would have been different if Brian was at my show, in the sense of I don't think anything would have like changed. It's just the confidence of them seeing you in person. It's just being that. It's just being present for them. And I think, you know, for me, like on my BMBF show day, I lost my head because I took my photos and I was like, I just don't like how I look. But obviously on a photo I looked fine. So it was kind of like I was just getting like stressed. And it was in that moment I was like, I just need someone in person to be like, it's okay.
Yeah, yeah, it is. It's wild, and also it's just like I don't know. You feel like a little team, don't you? You know, it's
Yeah.
sort of like that, and what you can gather from that with the diet. So the diet you did with AJ and the prep that you did with Brian,
Yeah.
were they similar? Because obviously both natural. Was it a similar
Yeah.
sort of format, or did you know?
Yeah, I mean, pretty similar to be honest. Like my prep with Brian, we ran like since the very first day of prep, we ran like 6 low days, 1 high day, and we actually didn't make a change for the 6 months. I just kept losing at the same rate. So I think my whole prep, we made one change, maybe. I know. Yeah. I know. That's
Wow!
crazy. So he said I was the easiest client ever because every week I would lose the exact same amount. Did no cardio the whole prep or anything. My body was just in a perfect place, in a perfect place to prep. And then same with AJ actually. We set like my starting macros, and for the first 8 weeks, I lost exactly the same every single week. And then it was after that, I knew I wasn't ready to carry on dieting because my body was getting stubborn. I was getting a little bit kind of like slack with it. I was just a bit like, "Oh, I can't really be asked."
Yeah,
And
yeah.
like for me, like I know when I can't can't be bothered in my brain, I know that something is wrong, if that makes sense, because that's not me as a person. And it's the same with like needing a deload. Like I know the moment I don't want to go to the gym, I need to take a step back.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. The thing is, as well, you train hard, right? So this, I did a episode on like progressive overload not long ago, and I was talking about, not everyone needs a dedo because not everyone's going to train as hard, and there's different people, there's different lifestyle clients, bodybuilding, etc. But I always find as well, right, like with my training intention since being able to spend longer in an off season mainly and having a decent gym, I couldn't just train without
Yeah.
deloads. I could
Yeah.
like physically, you get to the point where you say where I'm like, I am so fucked. Like
Yeah.
nothing's
Yeah.
helping me recover at this point. And again, that's something I guess sort of ties into the acceptance of the off season and the different phases. It's like if you're just training throughout and you're not really needing deloads and things like that, are you training as hard as you could be? And
Yeah.
are you, like you said, are you leaving something on the table where a year later you think, shit, I could have done a hell of a lot more here?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, 100%. And I think, like you said, if you're not training to like that level of intensity or you're a lifestyle plan or whatever, then you don't really need to back down. But like when you're going into every single session and like trying to like progress, so trying to do more than you did in the session before, you are going to be battered by the end of a cycle. So it's like for me, like when I start not wanting to go to the gym, but also I actually get the same with like I don't want to go to work because I'm so fucked. So I feel like I don't want to train. I just don't want to do anything. And then I'm like, okay, I'm fatigued. Like that's when I know that I just need to like take a step back, reset everything, have a few days off, and then I'm ready to go again. And those are the two things for me. Is like I don't want to go to work and I don't want to go to the gym. I'm like, okay, I need a deload.
It's like as well, and again, this is like an opposite way to think about it sometimes, but I sometimes get like appetite suppression rather than,
Really?
yeah. So sometimes I'm just like, I'm just sort of I'm so
Don't want it.
fatigued.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
like, and then my sleep's a bit off, and
Yeah, exactly.
like you get restless legs and shit, and you're like, this is just not right. And you can almost, I don't know if you get it, you can almost feel your mood is, you're not as empathetic, and
Yeah, I get ratty. I do, like genuinely, I'm like, oh, but I know I'm doing it. I just can't do anything about it. I just get really like short-tempered. So I'm like, okay, right, I need a break. And yeah, learning those signs for each person is definitely different. But yeah, I definitely know. And it's, some people be like, they'll have an odd week or they'll be on their period and they'll feel those things and think they need a deload, but like you don't need a deload if you've only been doing it for 2 or 3 weeks. So it's kind of also making sure you're not just taking any sign of fatigue and then deloading. You have to kind of accumulate lots of different things together and then think, okay, right, it's been 8, 9 weeks. I think now is a good time, rather than just doing one session and thinking, okay, I'm going to do it again.
yeah, for sure, for sure. I would say now probably top end is like I've done a 12-week cycle before the last training meso because I was doing my rehab stuff at the same time for my
Yeah,
knee. that was a different kettle of fish. But now where I'm able to push more, like 8 weeks is pushing
Yeah.
it. Like
Yeah.
so I'm like, I could
Yeah.
probably drag it out. But I also find that I sort of get these signs that we're talking about probably like week 7 tail end. And I'm like, and then, and I'm sure you have it, you sort of toss up, could I get another week and still facilitate some progression? And
Yeah.
like, and on a recovery or a deload week, do you find that you just still stay quite active? Does much change for you?
Yeah. So I always do the same setup where I take 3 days completely off and then 3 days at D volume. And for me, like if I take the whole week off the gym, mentally I struggle quite a lot because it's like it's my escape from like the real world, and it's like 3 days is nice, and those 3 days I don't want to go to the gym. I know that I'm ready because I'm enjoying not being there. But by day 4 or 5, like mentally I just need to go. So I go and kind of do a devolume, and like steps and things stay the same, food stays the same, and that also then acts as like a pivot week in terms of like fatigue. So doing like a few sessions as like lower volume, then going back into like full send the next week works quite nicely for me. But yeah, I mean, if I can time it for like in the summer where I take a deload and a holiday at the same time, then I don't train. But if I'm doing it just as like day to day, then yeah, I do 3 and 3.
Yeah, nice. It is as well. Sometimes, we can over egg what we're capable of in a meso and
Yeah,
how many days we're training, and it becomes this like you're just sort of training for the sake of it.
yeah,
And that again can be quite hard. People might be listening, they're doing 6.5 sessions a week or whatever, and it's a lot.
yeah,
And again, sort of the maturity of, I think, your mindset as an athlete, it's like the quality and intention in those sessions, if it is through the roof and like you say, full send as it were, it's like it's hard to actually train on that volume, right? Consecutive days.
yeah. Yeah, exactly. And I think as well, like depending on what you do for like your job also has like obviously an impact on what you can recover from. And I posted something on my story the other day, and it was like life stressors are also like it affect training stressors, right? And it's like that kind of resonated quite a lot with me because it was like I know that I can't do as much volume or as long of training as somebody that has a job that is probably a bit less stressful than mine. And like that is okay. It's like I can't physically do as much in a session as some people because then I do my session, then I go and have 10 hours of like a stressful day, and like I physically cannot recover from any more, and get into a stage where like I can happily watch people on Instagram do more than me doesn't mean I'm not doing enough.
I love
You
that.
know, it's
Mm,
like I see some people's sessions and I'm like, whoa, like they have so many movements and so many sets. Like, am I not doing enough? But like realistically, like that is as much right now as I can physically recover from, and any more would just negatively impact me. And being able to kind of like have that mindset is definitely something that's taking time because you always think like more equals better, but it doesn't for everyone.
yeah, for sure. For a lot of people, like I've got clients that have sort of come to me on 6 sessions a week, then we've gone to 5, and then we're on 4. And
Yeah,
they're training like a fucking beast and they don't want to do any more than 4. So,
yeah,
it's again, like you say, it takes time and it's an evolution. And also not having magpie syndrome and nipping that in the bud to
yeah,
control the noise that you consume and be
yeah,
able to actually, you've done phenomenally well as an athlete, right? And it's like, if you're doing those things alongside your job and alongside everything you're doing, and you're still
yeah.
able to, on this amount of volume and what you're doing, again, success leaves clues, right?
Yeah, exactly that. Yeah, no. Yeah, I feel like I finally found like almost just like a place where I'm happy, in the sense of like I've definitely compared myself to people in the past and stuff like that, but it's so unproductive, and learning like not to compare what you're doing to what anybody else is doing is like the biggest like take home from this little section. Like there is no value in that. As long as you're giving what you can every single day and you're recovering from it, and each week you're doing a little bit more than the week before, then you're winning.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. And also as well, it's, have you, this would be an interesting question. Have you almost changed your circle, enhanced your circle of people that you surround yourself with to facilitate this mindset as well?
Um, like yes and no. So even I'd say going back to like high school, I was never like I was never like a popularity seeker. Like I was never the popular kid, and I never was someone that had a big group of friends. Like I always had select friends from different people's friendship groups, which was really weird because people would have their groups, and I would have like one friend in this group and one friend in that group and one friend in that group. And I never really had my own group because I, not that I don't like everyone, but I very early on recognized like who my type of people were and who wasn't. And it's not that I just don't give time to people that almost are not on like the same wavelength as me. And I that's from high school, you know, and then going into college, it was the same. I had like one or two friends, and then going into uni was exactly the same again, you know. I had one or two friends, and for me, it's kind of like I've never chased the feeling of like "Oh, I need loads of friends because I don't. And the ones that I've had from high school are still the ones that I have now. Obviously, there's been an addition of like a couple on the way, which I've met through bodybuilding. Like I would say probably my two best friends now I've met through bodybuilding along the way, but it's still not kind of ever been someone with loads of friends. But the ones I have are such good quality and they support everything I do. And I think, you know, that is so important for anyone is like if someone's not providing you value or bringing you anything or supporting you or helping you to be a better you, like bin them off.
Yeah, for sure. And
Like,
obviously, you're doing the natural bodybuilding worldwide as well. Is that sort of, I guess you get acquaintances through that as well, but does that sort of
yeah.
bring a sense of, I don't know if belonging is the right word, but like finding your people, does it feel like that?
Yeah, like 100%. And I think for me, like my passion for like the sport has grown immensely since being coached by AJ, and that's because he is so passionate about it. And I think since I, joined his team and been coached by him and absorbed myself more in that side of everything, like I think my passion has like proliferated. And I think, then being invited to join MBW was like such a special thing for me, and it's probably like the biggest thing that I've had in the sense of like that it wasn't something I chased. It was something that came naturally. And don't get me wrong, like as soon as they started MBW, I thought I'd love to be an athlete. Like I absolutely would. But it wasn't something where I was like, I'm gonna just like chase a sponsorship. It was very organic. It was, I supported them as a brand. I posted them because I wanted to, not because I wanted something back from it. And even to this day, being part of it, I don't like posting things to get stuff from them. It's just that I genuinely love everything that they're doing and I love everything that they stand for. So yeah, I definitely think from that as well, I've kind of then got like my own little family almost with them, which is obviously super nice. But yeah, it just means that I can share my own passion in my own way, but being part of them, which I love.
It's so important, isn't it, to find, like you say, cut off, cut out the noise that isn't serving you, and you do
Yeah.
have to get to points in life where you're just like, I don't fucking need this anymore.
So
As you've outlined there, the right opportunities gravitate towards you when you're true to yourself. And
yeah,
I always
exactly.
say nothing beats passion because it's so obvious when you're really passionate about something. And was that similar to, because you've done some judging now, haven't you?
Yeah,
How
so
did that?
yeah, that was another thing that again, it came like so organically. And I guess anybody that's listening to this, like, you may have like people that, you want to sponsor you or you want to be part of a certain thing. And don't get me wrong, like I'm not afraid to say this. I've like done it the wrong way in the past. I've messaged a company and I've asked them, like, would you ever sponsor me? Like, I really want to be part of, your company and whatever. But that wasn't because I truly wanted to be part of that brand. It's because I wanted to be associated with that brand, but for the wrong reasons. And I think, anybody listening to this that is genuinely passionate about being an athlete for a certain company, like, don't just go and like, don't go and like beg for it. And it's the same with the judging. Don't get me wrong, like I always wanted to, but it was never something that I kind of like begged for. It happened naturally. And don't get me wrong, when I'm saying this, I do think there is some element of you have to put yourself in a position. My like favorite phrase is you create your own luck. People will say I'm lucky, but I don't believe that. Like I create opportunities to get other opportunities. And for me, it was I gave time to do the posing camps with BMBF. So I drove to Manchester once a month and I hosted a posing camp for free out of my own time. I didn't get anything from that. I paid for my own travel. I paid for my own everything. All of the expenses were on me. But then I gave them time and I showed them commitment. And then in return from that, they invited me to be part of the judging panel. And that wasn't, and don't get me wrong, when I was at the posing camp, I mentioned, oh, like, I'd love to be a judge, that would be cool. And then look what happens, So yeah, there's definitely an element of like putting yourself in the positions and giving stuff for free before you can then get stuff back.
For sure. I always say manifestation isn't going to come true unless there's some hard work and
Yeah.
direction behind it. Because we can all go, I really want this car, or I really, these fictitious things. But
Yeah.
it is, and this is the thing for yourself, you're a true advocate of the natural bodybuilding. So you're then representing a federation and then an organization.
Yeah.
Did I see that AJ's going to do a show?
Yeah, so the Natural Bodybuilding Worldwide Association have got their own show this year, which I'm so excited for. It's in October, which is such like an amazing thing for natural bodybuilding and sport because essentially at the moment, you'll know it, there's a lot of different federations that are all around. And sometimes, like, especially with the natural ones, like you earn a pro card in a certain federation, but then you can't compete with a different federation. And then you go to one show, but then you can't. And there's so many pathways that all lead to different places. Whereas, like, the vision of natural bodybuilding worldwide is to bring all of natural bodybuilding together, which is like such an important thing because you're getting athletes from all over the world in the same place, whereas at the moment they're all in different places. So the show allows probes from any federation, which is such a huge thing. And yeah, I mean, I know some of the bits that are going into it, and genuinely, like, I'm not being biased. Like, I genuinely think it is going to be like the revolution of natural bodybuilding, which is just so exciting.
Because as well, it's like a bit like the seminar we did and starting that. It's like we want to give as much free stuff to everyone that attends. We want it to be
Yeah,
equal. So there's amateurs, there's pros, there's heavily muscled
yeah,
categories, there's bikini, and you'll get this from being at the show. It sounds it's like suddenly you think we are all equals here. Like
yeah,
we're just
yeah. We're
passionate
just
about.
sharing passion.
Yeah, yeah, and there's almost divides in pro and amateur. Then there's divides across federations. I don't think I've actually spoken about that on the pod as much before, but it's real, right? Assisted and natty. It's like if you
Yeah,
can't do one, you can't do it. And then athletes are like, oh shit, I really like that federation, but that
yeah,
federation can give me X.
this, yeah,
And then there's the divide, of course, and this is why it's good to do this pod with you, natural and assisted.
yeah. And
And
yeah, I mean, like people's mentality on that is again, it's just so like people almost just like try to create something that's not there. Like I have utmost respect for assisted bodybuilding and I love assisted bodybuilding in a different way, like I love watching it, I love following it. I love seeing people like small but mighty. Like, how fucking cool is that? Like, it's so cool. And it's so cool to see like the limits of what you can do with assistance. And I think that is absolutely amazing. And I love natural bodybuilding for a complete different reason, but that doesn't mean that I can't support and be almost like a fan of assisted bodybuilding. And it's something that we spoke about before, but for me, it's kind of like if you're doing assisted bodybuilding for the right reasons, go you. Like I am all for it. But for me, the problem lies where people almost think assisted bodybuilding is just a fast track to goals, a fast track to get into a certain place. But if you can't nail everything as a natural, you will never be a successful assisted athlete.
for sure, it is. It's such a shame when, and whatever scenario that is, whether it's for a coach, a friend, whatever it may be, when people just jump on gear,
Yeah,
and it's hard when there's external pressures involved and people in your ear and your mates doing it and whatever else.
yeah,
But it's not really real bodybuilding, is it?
yeah. No, I know. I saw a post the other day. I can't remember who posted it. I think it might be one of the pro coaches, but it was basically saying like the problem with assisted bodybuilding for a lot of people is that they almost like they are looking for a fast way to get somewhere. And unless you can nail your meals, your steps, your cardio, all without assistance, like you're gonna really not get very far with assistance because assistance isn't a cheat code. It is basically enhancing what is already in place, right? You're never gonna get really, really far in assisted bodybuilding if you can't nail everything already. It's meant to help. It's not meant to be in place of. And like, people are like less than a year into the sport and they're already on like ridiculous cycles because they have this vision in their head, I want to be a mass monster, yet they still can't even track or weigh their meals.
It's wild when you talk about it, because you think, I also, I know we're in this like magpie and whatever era, but it's like, why would you want to do something that does have potential side effects if you can't fall in love with the fundamentals
Yeah,
of what you're trying to do? And there is knee-jerk decisions and whatever. I understand that we
yeah.
all do that in life, right, outside of bodybuilding, but it's like you're actually putting something into your body. Surely that has to be worth it. And I don't think that's sometimes spoken about.
Yeah, but then I also think like a caveat to that is like people don't know. Like people don't know the side effects of the drugs they're taking. People don't even know what the fuck the drug is they're taking. They just take it. Like people like do you know, like, people just like they put their trust in someone that they probably shouldn't put their trust into that doesn't know enough about what they're prescribing, right? And they're taking like all of these drugs at ridiculous concentrations and they don't even know what the drugs do or what they're doing. They're like, oh, my coach told me to take it. And like for me,
Right.
that's where the problem is. And it's not about, you know, like, oh, like natural assisted, whatever. Like being safe is like such a big thing. And I think not just taking everything like that someone says, you know, do your own research. Do you know, if you want to be assisted, fine, look into it, research it. Don't just take something you don't know what it is because, you know, people don't talk about the side effects as much, right? You know, it's very easy to open Instagram and see all these assisted bodybuilders that are doing really well, doing everything, but like no one talks about the bad side.
Yeah, yeah. Obviously, as you know, a mission for the podcast, because it's like there was certainly when I started it 3 years ago, I was like, I just don't think I've ever really heard a female talk about
Yeah,
this.
no,
You hear the male stuff and whatever.
yeah,
And also it's giving that safe space for people that are going down the assisted
yeah,
route and they're okay with the risk versus reward, or however we want to phrase that, happy with whatever.
yeah,
Um, the acceptance of potentially virilization, etc.
yeah,
It's also like if that can offer a safe space to actually people that are pursuing it, they know
yeah,
the risk reward
exactly.
and they're taking those steps. And we said this at the seminar. It was like if your coach is saying take X, Y, Z, yes, it's on you because you're taking or injecting or whatever, but ask them why.
Fine. What does this do? Yeah, like exactly. And yeah, I mean, the seminar is a great space for that as well. And it's so good that you're doing that because I think, you know, natural assisted anything, like the main thing, especially as females, is just getting more information out there and like getting more people to understand everything. Because, you know, like I said, it's so easy to look at like stage photos and be like, I want to do that, or I want to do that at assisted level, and fine, but you need to know everything else first. And like you said, like there's very few females that will speak about their cycles or the side effects and things like that. And yeah, it's real, you know, it needs to be spoken about.
Yeah, it is real. And I guess a sort of extension of this for the natural side, again, what we touched on at the start with, the tail end of a prep, that's real, right? Like the risk reward with naturally doing a prep and getting to very low body fat. Again, this is why, natural bodybuilding worldwide is good and what you do and how you talk about it and how you approach it. It's like none of this is normal per se, is it? It's,
Yeah, exactly. And like arguably it's more unhealthy for natural. Like you know, I always say this. People think my parents or like, you know, people that don't get it, I think like, oh, you know, you're natural, you're healthier, right? But like you're probably not, especially at the tail end of a contest prep. Like your hormonal level and where you are is probably not healthier than somebody that's taking assistance. And I always think, you know, I'm a very big thing of like for like first timers and people like that, not dragging out your prep unnecessarily because the longer you like, it's almost like a graph, right? And you know, you're at a stage where you're almost like hormonally okay, okay, okay. But the moment you drag it out slightly too far, you're dragging yourself to a place that's going to take a significantly more, like longer amount of time to recover from. So it's almost like you can probably stay at a relatively decent hormonal level, but then you push a tiny bit too far and then your recovery outcome then is going to be like way longer. And I think, you know, especially, you know, males and females, you know, you see if you took your bloods right at the end of your prep, all of your hormones are virtually non-existent. And that's just like, you know, your testosterone and things like that. That's not even talking about like leptin, ghrelin, hunger hormones. That's a different story. But yeah, I think, you know, don't be fooled by the fact that people think natural bodybuilding is healthy because it is really not. no bodybuilding is healthy when you take it. It's an extreme sport.
I think sometimes, when you're chasing the shreds and whatever, you forget that side and actually, what you're saying there with hormonal function. One of my initial sort of reasons, as it were, to look at assistance was my test was so low doing it naturally for multiple
Yeah.
preps. It's like 0.01 and it was,
Oh, wow.
yeah.
That's bad.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and it was wild, and taking fem test was part of the assisted side for me.
Yeah.
So it was multifaceted as well, but it is, what you do naturally, and the recovery as well. I've had preps where it's taken, as you said earlier, sort of 6 months, and then I go, oh, I feel all right now.
Yeah, but then even then, like
Yeah.
you probably like feel all right, but you're not all right, if that makes sense. Like
Makes sense.
to like get from a stage of like stage lean to genuinely feeling yourself again can be a year, you know? It can take that long to like genuinely feel your normal self again. And don't get me wrong, like after the first 10, 15 pounds of body fat go on, you are going to feel significantly better. But are you feeling completely normal? Probably not. And that's why, some people can get away with back-to-back preps and some people can look better back to back. You'll see like marginal improvements. But like it's not definitely not recommended for like especially the majority of people. And I do think, taking time away, especially as a natural, is such an important thing. And yeah, I mean, it just means then when you do come back, you are truly ready.
Yeah, for sure. Like you said earlier, mentally and physically. Now, with what you're doing now, do you have, so obviously we can have timelines with mesocycles, etc. So do you have like a plot out for this year, or you just see how it goes and you keep assessing the physique? Do you know what's
Yeah, I mean, so last year obviously I joined AJ the back end of 2023, but say January 2024. And then we had like a ridiculously productive 7 months. Like it was like almost like stupidly productive in the sense that we were both just like, wow, like I'm responding so well to everything. And then we started the diet then in summer last year. And when we started the diet, we were both like, like should this be a pre-prep? Like, feel
as you
like
do?
yeah, we were like, I feel like I've made enough improvements. I felt mentally ready at shows. I was like, yeah, I'm gonna prep this year. Like we were both in the same mindset. And then it got to the tail end of the diet, and we both just kind of like we never actually said it. We both just knew. It was like a no, like I'm actually not ready to prep yet. Like this was fun, but I'm like ready to go back into off season. So being in off season now since kind of October, like another push up phase. And then what we'll do is keep pushing up probably until summer again. We'll diet again. Now, I do imagine this time that will be my pre-prep for next year. I will definitely be prepping next year unless something significant happens. More so just as well, like I think like 2023 to 2026 is enough time. I don't want to spend any longer away. Also, I'm a female. I might want to have a kid at some point, things like that. It's like I have to take these things into consideration. I probably don't have that many preps left before I would want to have a child.
Right.
If that is something that I don't know yet. But like it's being mindful of those things. So I could wait another 5 years, but then I definitely don't want to only do one more prep.
Yeah, it's like, oh, what it is, it's a weird scenario, isn't it? When you start thinking, actually, how long have I got left? It feels
Yeah.
quite weird.
Yeah. And don't get me wrong, like there are so many incredible mums that prep and bodybuild, but like my perspective on it is I want to be in a place where like I know I could be happy and satisfied enough to not have to get back on stage because you never know, like you never know what pregnancy is going to do to you. You never know what it's going to do to your body. You never know what's going to happen. And I think like I could only have that as long as I'm satisfied to a certain extent. Don't get me wrong. If I do end up in the future having a child and my body is actually still in a pretty responsive state, I wouldn't be against then getting back on stage, but you just don't know.
Yeah, for sure. I've always said as well, I don't believe I'm going to have children now, but before I sort of decided, it was like, if I have a child, I think I'd just be obsessed with the child as well.
Yeah, honestly. Yeah, I know. It's
And
crazy, isn't it?
how old are you now?
26 now, 27 this year. So yeah, I'll be prepping next year, which will be my like 27, 28 year. and then I'll probably prep once more after that, and then maybe think about it. But it all depends on, for me, like I have one goal and I need to get there before anything else, and that is to be the world champion. Like I'm not afraid to say that. Like I want to be the best in the world, and I think I can, but it's just time. And for me right now, my limiting factor still is muscle maturity, which is obviously what we focused on this year and last year. So it will just depend really on like what happens when I next compete and go from there. Like when we last spoke, like I would never have imagined the season that I had, you know, like I never would have imagined winning my pro card, like things like that. So it's kind of like, even though they were goals in my head, like I still really struggle to like believe I can actually get there.
Yeah, it's like when you do really get those accolades or whatever in the sport, you that self-belief, you're like, holy shit, like
Yeah.
this is something I only ever dreamt of. And also, you're very humble. So this is an attribute I love about athletes that are pursuing it. Because also, people listening, there might be natural athletes listening that follow you and aspire to do what you've done or part of what you've done. And it's nice to actually put a voice to who you are. Because on physique, we see obviously the
Yeah.
and everything on Instagram, and it's like actually being inspired or finding someone aspirational, again,
Yeah.
it's like in this sport, that's super important as well, rather than this sort of jealousy or like you said, you're looking and you're feeling like shit. It's like,
Yeah.
wow, this is really inspiring for me and it drives you, doesn't it?
Yeah. It does. And like one thing that like I've always like I think this is what makes me me is like knowing like you supporting someone else, being happy for someone else takes nothing away from what you're doing. And like people that are like constantly criticizing other people or bitching about other people, it's like you are only making yourself feel worse from doing that, right? Like if you see me at a show, I have my friends are competing or whatever, like I am genuinely like the happiest person for them. And I can be happy for them whilst also like appreciating what I'm doing or whatever. And I think, in this sport, especially, as it's getting more popular and things like that, there's so many people that will just kind of like negatively look at other people or say people have it easier than them or just constantly make excuses, right? But like, what's the point? You're not gaining anything from that.
It's like, and you're coached by this person, so you're allowed in this tribe. It's almost like mini cults and stuff within. And this is what's always blown my mind. Exactly what you're saying there. When I came into bodybuilding, I thought, well, we're all doing something good here. I'm sure I'm
Yeah.
gonna make fucking loads of friends. This is great. And then I started going to shows and stuff, and I thought, oh, what's this? It's like school again. Like I
Yeah.
didn't, the sort of bullying, the
100%. And don't get me wrong, like there is still a lot of politics in it, which I think another thing that I'm super passionate and I know AJ is as well with MBW is making it politic free, like making it just like a nice place for everyone, and not have like any politics involved. And yeah, I do genuinely think like the vision for it is changing for the better. And that is what's so exciting. And that's what, everything kind of like he's worked towards. And it's just hopefully going to be just a place where people can genuinely come and just share passion.
yeah, it's you'd think that would be quite an obvious thing with
Yeah,
something.
right. But it just, yeah, I mean, even in like two bro shows and stuff, I've been to a few and I'm just like, oh, this isn't very nice.
Yeah, I must admit, some shows I've been at and even the camaraderie, right? Like I'm very much like you, whether I'm a spectator or I'm competing, I'm like, come on, go, you have your spot where you're like, I need to get my head in the game or
Yeah.
whatever. And I always rate that. But outside of that, you can sort of be nice,
Yeah,
it's
just be a nice person. Like, nice people get a lot of favor. It's like you don't need to be a dick. Like, just be nice. And like, don't get me wrong, like there's a lot of times where I'll just have my head down, and it's like, it's not that I don't want to talk. Well, it is that I don't want to talk, but it's not against anyone. It's the fact that like sometimes you just want your own space, and especially like if I'm training or in the gym, or if I am backstage at my own show. I'm not talking to people, but that is for a completely different reason. And it's like outside of that, like just be a nice person. Now, even if somebody tries to like almost like start a conversation negative about someone else, I don't get involved because what's the point? Like I'm not gaining anything from this.
Yeah, it is literally like, and also you think, right at the start we are talking about fatigue and etc. And it's like I even think about that now. I think, whether I'm dieting or off season and training or whatever, it's like if someone's negatively affecting me, that almost takes away from my vigor and what I'm trying
Yeah.
to do from training it and bodybuilding in itself, because the fatigue is real in off season and prep. And again, it's like people forget that bit because it's like, oh, off seasons are jolly. And yes, you can
Yeah.
loosen the reins in certain areas and what have you to a certain degree, but
Yeah.
again, it's not just let's throw everything up the wall and do whatever the fuck I want.
Yeah.
But when you're
Literally.
going to the gym, you're on your way and you're thinking, oh, this is going to be
Yeah.
fucking so hard.
Yeah, exactly that. And it's like, off season is like, I always put it like life season in the sense that like you still have a goal, you still have things that you have to do, you still have your non-negotiables, but you also have the opportunity to be able to go for food with your partner, to, go for coffee with your mom, to like go and see friends and to be a bit more flexible. And, there's a time and a place, which is prep for like almost like no flexibility. Like there is very minimal flexibility, but off season, like it's still your life, Like I still have a lot of things that I love traveling, I love going on holiday, I love eating, like I do love all of those things, but like to a degree where I can enjoy them, but not be diverted from like the bigger picture, which is I know what my goal is and I know what I want. So it's almost like weighing up the fact that like, yeah, okay, I am gonna go for a meal this day or whatever, but I'm not gonna go every single day because that would take me away from my goal. But one off isn't gonna take me away.
Yeah, for sure. It's like you can be a bit silly here and there or whatever, but I do again, probably a few times I've said this in this episode, the maturity, it's like off plan, it's literally to sit and have some nice food.
Yeah, that you're not cooking.
Yeah.
Like it's not reheated in the microwave, which is every fucking meal I eat. Like, it's just like it's just nice to like for me it's to have somebody make my food. Like, you know, every single day I meal prep, I cook, whatever. And like for me an off plan is like I can put something that's not gym clothes on, I can go out, I can just enjoy it, and then I don't have to clean up afterwards either. And it's just nice. And don't get me wrong, like I love a great burger as well. And it's not something that I would have every day. So yeah, I mean, you have to do those things in order to just almost like be okay with the whole process.
Yeah, and when prep comes, it's like I've done the things, I
Yeah,
can
exactly.
on.
Yeah.
And you've mentioned Ethan a bit on this episode, so that's your other half, your fiance now. So congratulations
Yes,
for that.
thank you. Thank you.
Do you find, well, obviously you guys have been together a long time, but do you find that if you think about it, it just works very well that you're with another competitor?
Yeah, I think, like we both say this a lot, like it would be very hard if either of us didn't do this. And it's not so much as like, I know I have friends whose partners aren't bodybuilders and it works fine. But like for us, it's just understanding, like understanding the day, each other. Like we never eat together because our meal times aren't the same times. And I'm okay with that. He's okay with that. It's like we don't eat the same food. We don't eat at the same time. Like it's just little things like that. Or if, for example, like I've already had a meal out this week with one of my friends, but we want to do something like he'd be okay if I wanted to track that meal so that it could stay within like my food. And if we go away, like when we're in America, like I'm quite anal about like having my protein servings. Like I need to have my protein servings. Okay. Ethan is a bit like he doesn't really care. He's on holiday, enjoy it. But I'm like, no, I need my protein. So like will go to the shop and get my protein. And I actually have like one of my friends who isn't a bodybuilder at all. And she just knows me because we went on holiday and she was like, do you want to go get your protein? I was like,
Oh my
yeah.
God, I love it.
I was like, yes, please. And she was like, do you want to go to the gym and I'll read my book? And it's just like, that's who you need in your life, People that are like, they don't make you feel bad about the decisions that you make. I know like people that will say like, oh, I want this. And they'll be like, oh, why? Like, why you don't need that or you don't need that. And those people should not be in your life because at the end of the day, like, if you want something, you shouldn't have to explain yourself. You shouldn't have to say why. And don't get me wrong, like, I've had enough people, my dad in particular, like, he will never understand it. But unfortunately, I can't just shut my dad out. So, and I wouldn't want to do that. But it's just like, it's taking, the thing of like, if I want to do something, I should be able to do it without any questions asked.
Yeah, especially the passion as well. And I think that, that translates to body image and maybe, you can get friends or parents or whatever. Oh, you're bigger now, you're smaller now. Can't you eat this? Can't you do...
Yeah,
And, there has to come a time where you're like, I can't take this noise on. Back to what we've said today. It's like
yeah,
only detrimental, but it's because they either care or they don't understand or they don't want to
yeah,
understand. And when it is obviously parents, it's a bit more difficult, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. And I when I did the MBW seminar before, I like one of the biggest things that I said was like take the time when you have it to explain to those people, like colleagues, things like that. Like you have to work with those people every day. You can choose to make it a problem or you can choose to talk about it. And like I started a new job last year, and the first thing was like obviously people notice, right? You're eating 5 times a day in work. They're like, what are you doing eating again? I'm like, oh, like, yeah, I'm a competitive bodybuilder and this is what I need to do for this reason. And then since that day, they're like, oh, that's pretty cool, And they'll be like, oh, we've got these really nice cookies in, like, I know you're not going to have one, but like, I can tell you about them or whatever. And like, those sort of like interactions are like, okay, like, they get it. But that's only because I've explained it. You couldn't just walk into a place and be like, well, this is it, and then be kind of like closed-minded, because I always say like we are the abnormality and people forget that. Like we are the ones that are different. It's not, people shouldn't understand, why would they? Not a normal people don't eat 6 times a day.
Yeah, yeah. It's when you actually take that into it, it's like you can it's almost like you hit different as well because it's like you're owning that. I always say like I'm weird and wonderful and I like that,
Yeah,
I don't want to be not
yeah, I was giving like a bit tapped I'm a bit tapped in the head.
we've all got some things going on.
I was like, we're all just a bit mental, really. That's all. That's the only reason we bond. That's why we do sport. We're all just a bit strange.
Yeah, now, will you be, before we wrap up, if people listen and they're a fan or they know you, if they're listening because they know you, what shows are you going to be at this year to sort of spectate, or are you judging? Tell me about.
Yes, I will be at definitely like the UKFBA show in May. And then I will be at all of the most likely judging at all of the BMBF shows. And then I will obviously be at all the UKFBA shows and of course the MBW show, which yeah, I actually am doing something exciting in that show, but I'm not going to share it yet. I might tell you after this is recorded
I
over. But
message you
yeah,
like,
I'm super excited for that show for a different reason. But yeah, I mean, I've had people before that have listened to these and they've messaged on Instagram and said, "Oh, like I saw you at the show, but if you do, genuinely, please come and say hi. Like I'm not a scary person, I promise.
I've had this before.
I
So,
saw you, but I was too scared to say hello." And I'm literally just a human as well.
yeah, it's really nice when you meet people in person. And as you said, it shows you're full of beans. When you're describing it, I'm like, we're literally the same. Like I get so fucking excited at shows. I'm like, I just love like all the physique, the smell of tan. I'm like,
Yeah, honestly, like I'm literally like looking at the calendar. I'm like, why is it only February? Like, come on,
and it's
I'm ready.
amazing.
I'm ready for show season, and I'm not even competing. Like, I get so excited by like just going to the shows and just being there like this, and I get a throbbing headache every single show, but it's fine.
I always find as well, because we spoke about this earlier, it's like when I've been in off seasons at shows, being back on the scene next year after Thailand, it was like I actually feel all right being height of off season when I thought that I
Yeah,
would be like, oh, and I get those thoughts of can't wait to be back on stage or
yeah,
like I love the stage.
yeah,
I'm like, oh, actually, I'm just celebrating everyone. Wow, look
yeah.
at that physique. Look at that physique. Look.
Yeah, no, I'm the same. Like when I'm sat there, I'm like, I can't wait for that to be me again. But right now, I'm very happy being here, And obviously Ethan competed last year, so I got to kind of like be there almost like more involved with him and watch him do really well. And that was obviously really nice. And this year we're both obviously in off season, which again, it's nice in itself because we can both go to the shows as spectators, not just as like one of us competing. Which again, if I was to compete this year, it would be the same again, but in reverse. So it's nice to like have that, and I'm grateful for that. But yeah, I love watching. I get so excited.
I'm like, there's something wrong with me, but
Yeah,
obviously it's both of us, so maybe not.
exactly. Yeah, literally. But yeah, I mean, I actually love judging as well. Like that is so much fun. Like I genuinely like. I wasn't sure if I would, but like when I was sat there, I was like, I love this.
Yeah, I remember the first time I judged, I was excited, a bit like you said. I don't know how this will go. Obviously, we know from competing, it's a long day for the judges, and
Yeah,
you said about a headache being a spectator when you're judge, like
yeah.
you get to, and you get home and you're like, what?
Wow,
Yeah,
what
because
happened?
I'm right, no, and then if someone wants to talk to me about feedback and stuff, and you're there, then you travel home and you get home and you're like, what?
Whoa. I know. Yeah. Yeah, but it's great. It's good fun. And again, it's just about giving back. Like I don't get paid for it. It's not, I had this conversation the other day with someone and it was like I do all of these things like genuinely because they make me like my happiest self. And it's like not everything you do has to be for money. Like we all obviously need money to survive, right? But at the end of the day, like don't be afraid to like give your time if something fills your cup, and going to shows, judging, doing posing workshops, they're all things that genuinely make me the happiest me. And like, I don't get anything apart from just genuinely like endorphins out of those. And that's okay sometimes, Not everything has to be for money.
Yeah, I say this about coaching. I'm like, I just need money to pay my bills. If I've
Yeah,
got that, and as you say, money makes the world go round. I'm really not in this to be, it's just money. If anything's like, no, I don't want your money. I would do it for free if I
if
could.
you could, exactly, right? Like everyone needs or wants financial stability because that allows you to then do things that also then brings other happiness and things like that. But like doing things like that, like shows and stuff, like for me, it's just so much because like I genuinely love to do it. Which I think, again, like people coming into this industry almost like try and fast track passion and you can't do that, is that you can't just set up a coaching business because you want money because that's not what it's about and you won't be a good coach if you go into it just wanting a side hustle. Like you have to truly be passionate about what you're doing and the reasons you're doing it for, which is like why I've only just taken on clients because like before then it was like I'm passionate about the sport but I wasn't passionate about coaching and there's a difference.
Sure, it takes time, and everyone listening is going to be like, I understand why Sarah got Xena on because it's that when you find that mutual respect and alignment of morals, again, it's like almost I'll be buzzing after this because it's addictive to spend and essentially spread this message and spend time with people that do that. And if you're listening, guys, have a look at Zena's Instagram. I'm sure she won't mind you reaching out on DM if you want to talk about it. But as I said in this episode, you're a true advocate of bodybuilding, and it's honestly an honor to know you. So thank you for coming on.
Thank you so much, and thank you. Yeah, honestly, like what you're doing is absolutely incredible, and it's just so nice to see like more females in the industry, just like set in their own ways and showing their passion as well, because I wouldn't say it was a male dominated industry, but I think there's definitely more content out there by males. So yeah, like everything you're doing is absolutely incredible. And it's always an honor to come on here. And yeah, just hopefully, we can actually do stuff in person as well in the coming years. Now you're back in the UK.
Yes, I'm back. I'm back. I don't like the cold, but everything else I'm here for. It's worth it to be smelling the tan again.
100%.
Thank you.
Oh no, thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. See you later.
Bye.